interesting for that top 4 finish. So let's see if Noriyuki, with the 8-3 record over Gavin 7-4, can finish the job and put himself into that 9-win territory. Once you hit 9 wins, you're guaranteed to make it into that Sunday play, and that's what we're looking at here. How do the openers look, Luis?
Well, Mori did have to mulligan, but this is a solid hand. He's got, 3 removal spells, counting the Spikefield Hazard, which he's likely not going to play as a land this game. And basically just kind of setting up to blunt the first few turns of Gavin's offense, and Gavin being the more aggressive deck. That's not a bad start. These are the kinds of games that I think Mori is aiming for. So a good start from his perspective, and we'll see if he can draw one of his controlling cards to take advantage of the fact that he's gotten to the late game.
You can see that Spikefield Hazard kind of hanging around in hand here, and Mori's going to take advantage of Stomp to kill the Sentinel, and then he's got the Spikefield Hazard to take care of the Magda, or if he wanted, he could go for the Bone Crusher.
I think it's a lot more likely that he ends up going Spikefield Hazard, the Magda, leave up both Jawari Disruption and Essence Scatter, and again, just control card after control card, just curving out with answers, which is kind of the dream when you're a control deck. He had good, efficient answers for the first couple plays. It's really going to be important for him to land a Jawari Disruption on like an Asika's Chariot if he can get there, but it's also pretty tempting to just cast it right now.
There it goes. Jawari Disruption is going to take down the Bone Crusher Giant, and that's going to prompt a Bone Crusher Giant after a tap land here from Mori. And we're going to see Lovestruck Beast ×2 here. So there's the token, and there's the 5/5. We've got a 5/5 and a 1/1 versus a 4/4. And interestingly, another Spikefield Hazard could take out the 1/1 and prevent that Lovestruck Beast from attacking. Though with Kyurabes the Sea God in hand now as well, Mori's not really interested in missing land drops either.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. And then, Gavin just drew another Lovestruck Beast, which is going to actually kind of destroy Mori here, because now the first Lovestruck can attack, and it's joined by the second and Lair of the Hydra. One of the themes going on this weekend, and one of the reasons we've seen very few control decks in this format recently, is lands like Lair of the Hydra really punish these control decks. And look, Gavin's just got everything he needs to win this game.
That's right. Mori all of a sudden finds himself behind. He does find Midnight Clock, which will be one more mana towards that Kyurabes the Sea God. It feels like that Kyurabes the Sea God is going to come down and win him the game, or Gavin Thompson's going to win the game before the clock itself becomes relevant outside of the mana. Here's another 5 damage crashing in here. Boy, that Lovestruck Beast off the top for Gavin Thompson was fantastic. Now, basically responsible for getting in 10 damage.
Oh, I think that Lovestruck Beast was exactly the top deck Gavin needed to take what looked like a close game into a landslide on his part. I mean, Mori had the perfect 1-2-3 curve in terms of removal, and still isn't coming very close this game, though. Bone Crusher of his own. The only problem is that Lair of the Hydra. It can serve as a huge attacker or as a 1/1 to make it so the Lovestruck Beast can attack regardless of if the token gets killed.
Wow, that's right. Boy, these creature lands from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms doing work. Also, wow, Gavin's, what is that thing called again? The 11-eyed guy? He's just going ham over there. Do you see that, Louis?
His Beholder? Yep.
His Beholder is just going off.
Xanathar just going off. That's a cool pet.
All right, Bone Crusher to kill the 1/1. And then play the Bone Crusher past the turn back. 5 mana here for Mori, so he's still not going to be able to cast Kyurabes the Sea God next turn regardless, and is still under big time pressure here. The clock ticks up to 3. There's a Magda, which doesn't seem to change the equation significantly here, but there's that Lair of the Hydra. My goodness sakes, becoming a 1/1. Now the Lovestruck Beast is unlocked once again. Big pressure here, and both creatures are going to come through.
And at this point, Mori has the option of either blocking Bone Crusher and taking 5 or chumping, or just double blocking the Lovestruck Beast. And it looks like he's going to opt to double block here. You're past the point of playing around your opponent having anything.
Right.
And if Gavin, had an Embercleave, he would have just attacked with everything most likely.
Okay, so the double block 2 Bone Crusher Giants, double blocking the 5/5 Lovestruck Beast. That means that that's going to be a trade, but 4 damage does sneak through, dropping Mori down to 4. Magda, and yeah, you might as well play your land here, Gavin. You can make that Lair of the Hydra that much bigger next turn. What was the draw step there for Mori? Expressive Iteration.
That's one of the better cards you could draw because he's in a position where if he draws a land to get him on the path to Kiora, he dies. So Iteration could find a land plus a relevant spell, perhaps, and that might get him to the point where he can cast Kiora the Sea God, though. I think that's going to be tough given that Lair of the Hydra lurking down there as a 5/5 attacker.
Yeah, any creature basically would be fine, at least as the board sits here. If Mori can go creature plus land, he'll have 2 blockers for the 2 potentially lethal threats, and then could follow up if he hits an untapped land next turn. Oh, he didn't quite get there, did he? He found... Oh, no, he did. Bone Crusher Giant. He can actually just cast it here.
Yeah,
wow.
Bone Crusher.
Yeah,
so you
go ahead.
cast Bone Crusher, you trade with the Bone Crusher, you chump Lair of the Hydra, you go to 2. The problem is then you cast Kiora the Sea God, and you just die.
Wow, there's a Den of the Bugbear off the top here for Gavin Thompson, too. So he's got an insurance plan now. And yeah, it looks like it's going to be just a little too slow here for Mori, as there's 2 lethal threats plus a 2/1 Magda crashing into the red zone here for Gavin Thompson. Mori, all he can do is chump block, trade, go to 2. But if his best play is Kiora the Sea God next turn, which it almost certainly is, in fact, he finds a second copy of it and doesn't have enough mana to cast even the first one, he's going to scoop him up. And wow, Gavin Thompson on the brink of falling too far behind, finds Lovestruck Beast number 2 and rolls to victory from there.
That was the draw of the game. Had he not drawn a 1/1 that turn, then his 5/5 wouldn't have been able to attack, and Mori ended up barely slow enough to not get Kiora the Sea God out, and he needed maybe 2 more turns. But yeah, that's kind of what the Gruul Adventures deck does, and you know when you kill the 1/1 to try to strand Lovestruck Beast, you're living on borrowed time. It's not going to last that long.
Right. Yeah, he needed another turn or 2. So he was pretty far off there. All right, players are going to consult their sideboards now here for game number 2. Again, worth noting the records, they're not the same for our players. Noriyuki is on an 8-3 record versus Gavin 7-4. And that means that the stakes are very high, particularly for Noriyuki, as he'd love to pick up that 9th victory and lock up his seat there, probably in the top 4. If he doesn't, Gavin Thompson will improve to 8-4, put himself in a good position, and potentially force a tiebreak for somebody. All right.
Mori once again starting with a Hand of All removal, and we'll see how this plays out.
Look at that Edgewall Innkeeper off the top. If he's tempted to play that out here, boy, that Cinderclasm could just be a disaster. Gavin's going to have to be aware of that, and it looks like he is.
It also doesn't play around just Cinderclasm. It also makes Bone Crusher Giant a lot less appealing, and that's something that you really want to avoid walking into if you can.
Okay. Interestingly, a Maze Mind Tome off the top here for Mori.
And Mori has to decide now, do you want to make the traditional iteration on turn 3 without having played a land play, or just get out Midnight Clock? I do like getting out Midnight Clock, but it's going to run headfirst into a Wilt here.
Yeah, so Thompson's got to be happy with this. He decided to play it patient. He could have cycled the Wilt that turn had nothing showed up, but something did. Midnight Clock hits the battlefield, but it was there for about half a second as Gavin Thompson snaps it off and then draws his card for the turn. And he's just going to cast the Lovestruck Beast here, not worry about the Edgewall Innkeeper for now.
This play also makes it less likely that Gavin can play the Esika's Chariot next turn, and Chariot's one of the stronger cards.
And there's a Burning Hands now out of the sideboard here for Mori. That's going to take down the Lovestruck Beast and reduce Gavin's board state to just the 1/1 token again. It's going to chip in for its 3rd point of damage, though.
Gavin Thompson has a main deck Snakeskin Veiled that gives a +1/+1 counter and hexproof. The presence of one of those cards in an open decklist format just makes your opponents do things like cast main phase Burning Hands when you might have wanted to leave your mana up and kind of decide what to do, when to do that later.
Are we going to see Cinderclasm here for a big effect? It looks like it. Cinderclasm with Kicker is going to knock out all the tokens on the board. The 2 cats from the Chariot as well as the 1/1. But there's a nice follow-up here for Gavin. He gets to play Edgewall Innkeeper plus Bone Crusher to draw a card. He can even get in for 4 with the Chariot, though there's currently nothing to copy.
Still is nice getting a 4/4 haster out of the deal here.
Yeah. Okay, down to 13 goes Mori as Gavin Thompson passes the turn back.
And here we're seeing, one of the things that can happen in this matchup. Mori's got Expressive Iteration. He's got Maze Mind Tome. He has the card draw that actually he was lacking last game. Imagine how good Expressive Iteration would have been when he curved out with removal. But he's just not able to take full advantage of them because every turn he has to tap out to answer the things that Gavin Thompson's doing. And I think at this point, the Gruul deck is heavily advantaged because it's putting Izzet on the back foot. Mori just has to spend his turns answering the last play, but every play either has haste or draws a card. And that's just incremental advantage after incremental advantage. At the end of the day, I think we're going to know, which deck is standing if these turns keep going this way.
Yeah, it really does seem to be adding up, especially when you look at Gavin's hand here as he's going to go Edgewall Innkeeper into Bone Crusher, into Activate the Chariot, and get in with that yet again. This is even better. He has an extra Seeka's Chariot in hand now as well, so if it were to get traded off, he would be fine with that. He also gets to smash with the other Bone Crusher Giant too, so the pressure does not let up, and he's got Goldspan Dragon, another Bone Crusher, and another Chariot in hand too, so it's just all action here for Thompson.
Thompson's not even down on cards. It's not like the aggressive deck is trying to get the game over with before, the control deck draws too many cards. Just drawn multiple cards off Innkeepers, Bone Crushers. Seeka's Chariot was like, you answer the cats, but I get to keep the Chariot. That's just the way the threats are built these days, and it's going to be really tough for the Izzet deck to come back from this.
Yeah. Red Cap Melee was the draw step. That could be part of the equation. Let's see what happens here. Expressive Iteration first, though, for Mori. He's down a game. He's looking to lock up his seat here, and it is not looking good for Mori. What did he find? Field of Ruin. Well, that's the kind of card that you're happy to have after you've stabilized so that you don't get got by a creature land, but he needs to affect the board a lot more directly here. He has Expressive Iteration. And he's going to pass the turn now. Is his Maze Mind Tome on 3? It looks like it.
Yeah, which puts him in a virtual 13.
13, right. He's technically facing lethal 4, 8, 9. He's at 9, but he can gain that life off of the 4th Maze Mind Tome reading whenever he wants. But as you can see, a Goldspan Dragon here means that the Red Cap Melee is going to have to be part of the equation as well. Huge pressure from Gavin Thompson here. He has not let up. He is in battle mode against Noriyuki Mori, and Mori has been given more than he can handle here. So first things first, Maze Mind Tome finds Cinderclasm, which doesn't look super great here.
Can kill the Edgewall Innkeeper, but that's basically all it's going to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. I suppose you just do that, though. Unless he thinks that his out is drawing another Cinderclasm and firing both of them off or something.
Yeah, that would not be an unreasonable play to make.
If he can Expressive Iteration into a land and another Cinderclasm, that could be a way to wipe the board. But he's going to fire it off here.
There's also 2 Den of the Bugbears just waiting in the wings here, with so giving Gavin an additional bit of reach, even if Mori were able to answer what was in play.
All right, here it is. Expressive Iteration. He found Essence Scatter. Way too late for that. He's facing down double Bone Crusher Giant and actually double Den of the Bugbear. So this is huge. This Expressive Iteration. Oh, no, that does not look like a happy Noriyuki Mori. He just put his hand in his head. Well, okay, he did find Fire Prophecy. And he put Bone Crusher Giant in the exile zone. That does leave him dead, though, doesn't it?
The combination of Stomp, end of turn, plus activate Den of the Bugbear, that will spell victory for Gavin Thompson here.
Yeah, because Fire Prophecy killing a Bone Crusher reduces Mori's life total by 2 either way.
And even if you kill the Den of the Bugbear instead, this Stomp takes you from 5 to 3, which means the unblocked Bone Crusher will in fact be lethal.
Right. There it is. Stomp to the face here from Gavin Thompson, and he is on the verge of victory. Wow, he even found a Phoenix of Ash here as well. He's got Mori down to 3 life. And he can produce any number of additional lethal threats here via Phoenix of Ash or a Bugbear.
And Gavin at this point is just looking at the deck lists to make sure, both of these, do they lead to victory? Is there a reason to play one over the other? And turns out it doesn't really matter which one he plays.
That's right. 3 different lethal threats. That Phoenix of Ash can become a 4-2. Double 4-3s crash in, and Gavin Thompson picks up the victory here in the last round. What a win for him. And he just made our day a lot more interesting, Luis. We are going to get some tiebreakers here for that top 4. This is going to throw a real wrench in the works. Things are going to be a little different here. Not quite as clean cut as we thought they might be right there. So what we're going to do now is take a short break. When we come back, we'll have more from the Challenger Gauntlet. It's getting interesting. Don't go anywhere.
And this is 12 minus 8. This looks like lethal with this Bone Crusher Giant. Actually, David's going to steal this game.
No way. That Bone Crusher is enough to actually get the win here? Wow. And Sam Pardee can only shake his head because he could have thrown another creature on it. And David Inglis wins that game. Unbelievable.
Oh, this is just end step. Okay, yeah.
So
all right.
Can't get it out this turn. I just hit your bird. Come on. Take out that anger and frustration on Yorion.
Yeah, otherwise you can just cling twice here. I like that line as well. That was nice.
I love it. It's Bone Crusher removal.
So mean to Yorion.
It's okay. He can deal with it.
Oh.
So I heard you like Kraken tokens. Oh my God. Another one that can crew up and then make another one. There's going to be 3 8/8s on the battlefield here for Mori.
Better make it 3.
Wow. Buy one, get one free there on the Kraken tokens for Noriyuki Mori as he slams in, forcing some action. I wonder how many cards in the yard here for Nettles. And welcome back to coverage here of the Challenger Gauntlet. Louis Scott Vargas with Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm the second one of those people. We've got more Magic action for you here as we wind down the Swiss portion of the tournament. We have Ian Birrell, who interestingly started things off yesterday kind of mediocre, had a 3-3 day yesterday, but has really rallied today to finish 7-4 coming into the round, where it's been kind of the opposite here for Arne. Arne actually was 5-1 yesterday, but has gone 2-3 today, but still a good 7-4 record. And these players are playing for that top 4 slot. Most likely, it's not 100%, but they put themselves in a very good position to snag one of those top 4 spots with a victory here. Now, the interesting part is Arne is on Gruul Adventures, the one that splashes black. And on the other side, I mean, calling it a throwback deck, perhaps a bit strong, but a deck you don't see quite as often now, Sultai Ultimatum in the hands of Ian Birrell.
Sultai has kind of fallen out of favor in large part thanks to those. You see, Arne's got 5 different copies of the creature lands. You've got like Lair of the Hydra, Den of the Bugbear. And part of it is you can end up trading off a bunch of removal, maybe casting a sweeper, and then they just have an extra 5/5 or an extra 3/2 plus a 1/1 attacking you. But that doesn't mean that Sultai can't win matches, and certainly it's a powerful deck still. So definitely would not count it out. And the more concessions that these adventures decks make for the mirror, think Sam Party's, full stock of giant killers, kind of the weaker they do get against something like Sultai because you don't expect that many people to play it.
Edgewall Innkeeper is going to kick off the festivities here for Arne. And Ian is going to play Wolf Willow Haven here. So 1 turn window here for Arne with the Edgewall Innkeeper, though there's only 1 creature that he's got that actually triggers it there. And he's going to run out Ranger class instead here.
Wolf
Ranger
Willow
class,
Havens
pretty sweet.
are pretty nice draws for Ian because now he's really ramping. I mean, this is a classic turn 4 ultimatum if you had the ultimatum, which Ian does not currently have. Still pretty tempting to just play another Wolf Willow Haven and then maybe play a Cultivate and be in position to cast ultimatum if you draw it. If you don't, you can start getting, Yorion into hand, maybe Heartless Acting something. And definitely a close game here, and will really hinge mostly on what's on top of Ian Birrell's library.
Looks like he's going to pile up all the Wolf Willow Havens on the 1 swamp here and then fire off the Cultivate. He's got his islands in hand.
The fact that he has all the islands in hand means he actually can't cast an ultimatum next turn, which is kind of funny.
Ooh, so if he top decked one, he could get a bit punished here.
Certainly could be.
Well, it's a little bit awkward. Here comes Bone Crusher Giant onto the battlefield. That's going to net a card there for Arne off of the Edgewall Innkeeper. Arne's just going to attack in for the 3, knock Ian down to 16 and pass the turn back. Not a lot doing there, just Yorion into hand for Birrell. He needs action. He needs it quickly. He does have a Heartless Act to stem the bleeding here, though.
Yeah, you don't really have a great target for it. You get punched in the face by Bone Crusher, but that's probably the best you can do right now.
He's going to do that. Take the beats here down to 11. He falls after the 2 from the token, the 1 from the Innkeeper, and the 2 from the tax, if you will, on the Bone Crusher. Asika's Chariot's the follow-up play, and another land off the top for Birrell. This one could be over in a heartbeat here.
Yeah, a Yorion is at least a decent blocker, but it's going to be tough. So Ian does get to flicker out the Wolf Willows and then place them on untapped lands. He can actually make a wolf this turn on his end step as a result.
Oh, right, because it's your turn, right? Okay. He certainly wants to get that wolf onto the battlefield if possible. That's crazy off of 1 land, but that's exactly what happens. So there he goes. Now he has the 4/5 flyer in Yorion plus a 2/2 on the ground, but he is facing down Ranger class, Asika's Chariot, 3 2/2 tokens, and an Edgewall Innkeeper, plus Arne with all of his mana and cards in hand available. Card I'm looking at, of course, is that Goldspan Dragon. As the Yorion's a nice speed bump for it, but the Yorion's kind of committed to block Asika's Chariot, and I can't do both.
Well, you get to a point where if you're going to attack into Yorion, it doesn't really matter if you add more creatures into that because you're losing 1 creature no matter what. Mm-hmm. It's actually not the most trivial choice because Arne also has the ability to level up Ranger class, animate Chariot, and just attack with like a 5/5 Chariot. The problem is you really want to minimize how many turns Ian gets to top deck that ultimatum because you don't just lose to an ultimatum, but in this position, if Ian casts one at 6 facing down a board of creatures, he could still easily come back from there. So you never feel that comfortable playing against this Sultai deck, even if you're in a good position, because Ultimatum is such a swingy, powerful card that it warps the entire deck to be built around it.
Let's see how aggressive Arne ends up getting here. Looks like he's actually considering playing a second copy of Asika's Chariot. Yeah, that's what he's going to do. He'll throw that one right in the bin. But he'll get a couple of cats out of the deal. What's the line of thinking here?
It opens the door for more cats to attack this turn because you crew with the new one. So now Yorion blocks a Chariot, and that's a pretty much forced block. And then the wolf either blocks an innkeeper or blocks one of the 2/2s attacking, and
So
Ian either
7
falls
gets through?
to 5 or 6, depending on what you choose whether to block.
So this is Arne putting maximum pressure on here.
And setting up
Ian?
for a kill next turn, ideally.
Exactly. So Ian, it really just has the one turn here. Try to find an ultimatum and see if he can't find a way out of this mess.
A Shadow's Verdict could also, at the very least, buy him a bit of time.
Okay. And then it's a replacement Edgewall Innkeeper go, and it is an Elder Gargaroth.
All right, so that puts Ian at a virtual 8, right? You think if you block with Gargaroth and then game 3, and then you get to block 4 things. This actually looks.
Arne is distraught at that draw step.
Well, it exactly saves Ian, because Ian can block Goldspan Dragon and 3 tokens, and I think takes 7 damage going down to 1.
Wow. So that was like the perfect draw there for Ian, outside of perhaps an ultimatum or something.
He had a number of draws. Shadow's Verdict, Extinction Event, Ultimatum would all put him in a decent position. But yeah, the Gargaroth, I think, might have been better than a lot of those, because not only does he go to 1 and survive this turn, he also ends up. Oh wait, no, he had 1 extra token. Never mind. He goes to -1. I think there were 6 tokens, not 5.
2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 damage coming across.
So he's going to draw a card, and there's not much he can do to get out of there.
Woo! So Arne Huschenbeth picks up the win here in the first game. He goes maximum pedal to the metal, applying as much pressure as possible. Ian found a pretty good one with the Gargaroth, but ultimately the math was in Arne's favor.
Most definitely.
He's going to pick up that first game. All right, sideboard time for our players. And let's see, it looks like a couple of Burning Hands and a Crowan War and a couple of Clothis coming in. Interestingly, Embercleave coming out. That's, of course, one of the cards that can lead to the quickest victories for Arne, but he's pulling them. And 2 Lovestruck Beasts coming out as well.
A little
Yeah,
clunky
like
hand for Ian here, but I think keepable one.
Yeah, I see that Extinction Event kind of jumps off the screen there. Also a Shadow's Verdict. Having a way to sweep the board a couple of times versus Arne's deck is a great way to buy yourself a bunch of time. Arne's going to kick things off with Edgewall Innkeeper. A land off the top of the library for Ian is exactly what he wants to see.
A black land's really nice because it looked like you were going to have to choose between playing Palaka Predation and at tapped and Omen of the Sea. Now you have at least the opportunity, if you want, to play Darkboard Pathway and still cast Omen of the Sea on 2. And then you could even just cast Palaka Predation, because it can take something like an Asika's Chariot or an Avenger creature out of Arne's hand.
Mm-hmm. Look at this. He's going to go with Valki, God of Lies. This will give him the ability to take one of the, well, actually 4 creatures. Everything's available in hand here.
Pretty natural to take the Bone Crusher, because otherwise the Bone Crusher just stomps on the Valki on turn 2. So,
Curious to see if this means that Ian's more likely to try to play Palaka Predation next turn with the knowledge that he has now. Oh, there's an Embercleave.
Well, it is appealing to take Clothes, because getting that out of the hand when you have no real way to kill it on board is definitely real. Though Cultivate does kind of give Ian another option, because now you could ramp up to an Extinction Event or Shadow's Verdict. But yeah, I mean, Arne doesn't have great attacks. The Valki is happy to trade with basically anything, get your card back out of it.
Yeah, it's got to be tempting, that Cultivate off the top of the library there, given his hand. Shadow's Verdict, Extinction Event. Whoa, okay. He's going to use Valki to turn Bone Crusher Giant and pass the turn.
Wow.
I did not see that coming.
Pretty cool. It gets it out of Burning Hands range.
Yeah, it does. Oh, man. And it currently blocks both of the creatures.
I think I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen Valki turn into the thing that it's stolen.
Yeah, it is very uncommon. That was kind of interesting. Let's see how it works out here for Ian. Wow, both creatures just going to send in here, and Ian's going to be content to just snap off a block with Bone Crusher on Magda.
Oh, you really want to block the Innkeeper here, because this is telegraphing an Embercleave, and if you block the Magda, you get really punished.
Oh, he's deciding. And he did, in fact, block the Magda, and he is going to get fully punished here. And Ian says, ooh, baby, that did not work out the way that I wanted it to. Down to 16 he goes. There's a ray of enfeeblement. Where you been?
The ray would have been nice earlier, though he could still cast it this turn if he wanted. He could like cultivate and make sure and get a swamp in hand, play the swamp, then ray down the Innkeeper. You're still taking 6 off Magda, which of course you're not happy about, but that sets up a sweeper next turn, which could maybe deal with the Embercleave. Part of what's annoying here is if you take too much damage, then the Clothies becomes a huge threat. Whereas when you're at 14 or 16 or something, it's not that big of a clock. It can be a pretty substantial clock if you're at 10 or 8.
Okay, it is going to be Cultivate, and Ian knows I need to get a swamp here so that's the land that I play out of my hand for the turn so that I can Ray of Enfeeblement if I'd like to take down that Innkeeper. And it certainly seems like
also
something you'd be interested in.
Also has the ability to Ray of Enfeeblement the Magda and prevent 6 damage, which isn't
true.
An unreasonable place to be.
Yeah, that's interesting. 6 is a lot here. He's at 16 life. He could kill the Innkeeper and go to 10, then cast one of his sweepers to deal with Magda. No, he is going to use it just to soak up damage here. He's only going to take 1 this turn as a result, but he had to burn a card to do it.
Well, one of the reasons I do like this is you're probably going to cast a sweeper next turn, so preventing a bunch of damage instead of killing an Innkeeper is going to end up working out pretty nicely.
Yeah, Arne sees the writing on the wall, but says, I'm going to force you to do it. He goes Lovestruck Beast after casting Heart's Desire. That gets him a card off of the Innkeeper as well, and really forces the issue. I mean, this is telling Ian, like, you got to do something here.
So if he casts Extinction Event, he could kill like the Innkeeper and the Lovestruck Beast. Pretty hard to justify doing that instead of casting Shadow's Verdict. And then once you're in that position, I feel like you probably have to just play Palaka Predation as a land. Intentionally missing a land drop as Sultai is typically not going to work out very well for you.
Right. And that's what we're going to see here. So there it is. Shadow's Verdict to completely wipe the board. And Arne has to rebuild here. But the good news for him, he's got all spells in hand here. 5 spells.
And here might be an opportunity to get down Magda as a threat that can pick up Embercleave and just get down Clothies as a recursive sort of, life drain. But you could also just play 2 creatures like Bone Crusher and Magda if you wanted to make it more likely you've got an Embercleave target next turn.
Okay, Magda plus Bone Crusher Giant. Your move. There's Elder Gargaroth now for Ian. Boy, he doesn't know about the Akroan War in hand. He does know about the other 2 cards.
Yeah,
maybe the Burning Hands is enough to dissuade him.
Already knowing about Burning Hands means you basically can't cast Elder Gargaroth.
Okay.
But he's got the opportunity if he wants to go Cultivate and again play the land for the turn, Extinction Event away the Bone Crusher. You take 6 off the Magda, but it also takes it takes Arne's almost entire turn to use the Embercleave there.
He's going to take a slightly different line. He's going to go for Omen of the Sea, and then he can still Extinction Event. In this case, he's actually found Heartless Act, so he could do that and Cultivate as well.
Well, that actually worked out better. It was, I think, a little bit riskier of a line, but I think it worked out incredibly well because now he's going to have Heartless Act up still, but so he's not going to get hit by whatever gets Embercleave next turn.
Okay. Okay, so Ian Birrell goes for the upside play by a little bit, and he hits it. So Heartless Act at the ready. He has Elder Gargaroth Extinction Event in hand, but he's facing down a Bone Crusher and a Magda.
Nice play here from Arne. He did not equip Embercleave.
He's not buying it.
Just instead saying like, okay, I think you got a removal spell, and then he's going to attack. Maybe Ian uses Heartless Act. Oh, he chooses not even to use Heartless Act.
Wow.
Probably trying to set up Extinction Event or into Heartless Act or something along those lines, but this is the spot where Clothies is a huge threat. Ian now has a very hard to stop clock out because it's just really hard to actually get Clothies off the field.
Soul Shatter means that he can really deal with the board any number of ways. So the two creatures on the battlefield really aren't going to be the things that kill Ian. It is going to be Clothis sitting back there chewing away at the graveyard and draining him. Down to 9 is Ian Birrell, and he's kind of in the danger zone. He's going to run Yorion into hand here off of the tax and then just pass the turn back.
Soul Shatter is actually a really nice draw because now you can Heartless Act the Magda and then Soul Shatter away the Bone Crusher and not take any damage from Bone Crusher's trigger. So this turn, kind of expect Ian to just use his 2 removal spells, kill the 2 creatures, then play Yorion on Omen, and maybe try to find an ultimatum to outrace that Clothis.
Does Arne not want Clothis to become a creature here? Strangely.
There aren't very many cards that actually punish Arne for that, because even Soul Shatter, he could just sack the Bone Crusher instead.
I'm just wondering if Ian could set it up where he Heartless acts a thing and then Soul Shatters.
I don't think there's really any way for Clothis to be a creature and then Heartless Act to resolve and then Clothis to still be a creature.
Okay, you'd need 100 permanents or something. All right, so here's Heartless Act now to kill the Magda. And now we'll see Soul Shatter to take care of this Bone Crusher giant. And as you said, this gets around getting punched in the face by it as well. So Ian's life total will stay at 7. But that Burning Hands is just sitting there in hand. Okay, there's Alrund's Epiphany. Does that get something going for him?
It's not a bad draw. I mean, it's a free 2 birds. 0 mana, make 2 birds.
Mm-hmm.
Can't really complain about that. It's better than any other card you could draw, assuming next turn you draw something good, especially.
Okay, it's Extinction Event, not what he wants to see. And Ian Birrell looks disappointed at that. He may just have to go for Yorion here.
Pretty hard to pass up Yorion with Omen of the Sea, because
yeah,
that's the brutal part about that Burning Hands. It just sits there taunting you. You know it's in Arne's hand. You just can't cast this Gargaroth unless you bait the Burning Hands out or maybe have some way to discard it, though I can't imagine he's got very many copies of Duress in his deck right now.
Right. Okay, here comes Yorion. But there's a very real clock with that Clothis sitting on the other side of the battlefield.
Ian still maneuvered this to a pretty solid position considering where he was just a few turns ago.
Yeah, he has.
He is losing 2 a turn, but it's not looking like Arne's going to get that much more damage out if passed through outside of that. Like even with that lair of the Hydra there, you've got a bird and a Yorion there to block.
Okay, well, he sees an Omen of the Sea off of the Omen of the Sea, off of the Scry here. So he'd love to draw that, I assume. That gets him deeper into his library. And he needs to dig right now because he is under pressure. He's falling down to 5 now from Clothis. And he's just got 3 turns to go before his life total will be fully depleted. He either needs to win the game by killing Arne before that or find an answer for Clothis or somehow gain a bunch of life. And there's the Akroan War to steal Yorion.
And Akroan War does have a pretty solid effect here. At the very least, it delays Ian's ability to win the game through combat pretty significantly. Also, equipping Embercleave onto that Yorion is a real threat.
It is. So it's a lethal threat. It's something that that Ian is going to have to deal with. There's a power word kill.
You are not in a position to be able to stock up more removal here, I don't think.
Not
like,
at all.
If you do that, like you're just kind of conceding the game to Glothus, it seems like.
Right. Okay, another Omen of the Sea with as much mana as Ian has. He's right now considering whether he wants to scry with Omen of the Sea. There's Kioribes the Sea God.
Unfortunately, you can't cast that because Yorion with Embercleave just takes you down. Like, you might be in a position where you have to extinction event away your own Yorion, as sad as that is.
Yeah, that's tough. But again, it's another vote for the Crone War being awesome. Even in a matchup like this, it's doing work.
We've seen the Crone War do a lot of good stuff this weekend.
It really has. There's also, I think, a layer of the Hydra back there for Arne.
There is.
Lucranos.
Binding's interesting because maybe you could get into some sort of position where you go binding the Crone War to get back my Yorion, fall to 3. Next turn, play Kiora, fall to 1. No, that doesn't really work. And again, the Gargaroth would gain life, but that Burning Hands is just going to be reserved for a Gargaroth. Binding might still give you the best chance to win this game over a random card.
It does look like that's what Ian's decided as well here, Luis. He's going to cast Binding the Old Gods. He also could consider taking out the Embercleave, as that would make Yorion a non-lethal threat. But, man, just getting Yorion back doesn't sound bad either. Especially since he needs to be serving himself. Well, no, he's going to take out the Embercleave. That means he's going to have to chump block with one of these birds.
I don't think this play works out great. It depends if Arne wanted to go for it. Arne could have gone end of turn, Burning Hands a bird, on my turn activate Lair, but you run into Power to Kill or Heartless Act pretty bad if you do that. So I'm not surprised that Arne took the slightly more conservative line here.
Is that Garrick Unleashed off the top there for Arne?
Oh yeah, there's no leashes in that Garrick.
Yeah, so that's +3/+3 and trample for Yorion. That's 7 power coming across with trample, and there's no way out here for Ian Birrell. And Arne Huschenbeth picks up the victory and puts himself in a fantastic position for top 4. Boy, that sideboard plan there from Arne really came through for him.
It's always dicey when you bring in cards like Burning Hands and the Crone War against a deck that might just be going ramp spell, removal spell, ultimatum. But you do get to have to respect Gargaroth, and in that case, the presence of Burning Hands just negated the Gargaroth that entire game. And as we saw, the Crone War actually managed to steal a game too.
It did. Another game. It's got a lot of games stolen on the weekend. Just another one for the Crone War and another one for Arne, who's had a bumpy ride today after a fantastic day 1. And he's put himself into great position for top 4. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll have more round 12 action for you. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to coverage here of the Challenger Gauntlet. Marshall Sutcliffe with Luis Scott Vargas. And we've got a little more round 12 action to bring you here before we wrap up the Swiss. We've got Sam Rolfe, and he's facing down Matti Kuzma. And these two players are in the same position that our prior match was in, the one that we just watched there. They're both in 7-4. And that means that with a win, they either put themselves into the top 4 or at the worst case, they're going to be in a tiebreaker to try to make it in. So high stakes here. This is really a tense moment for these players, a lot on the line. And it's Gruul Adventures in the mirror match here, Luis. What do you make of it?
Well, both of these players tested together have the same kind of offbeat Gruul list where they're effectively splashing Tybalt and then some sideboard black cards. And the interesting thing here about sideboarding is it looks like Sam Rolfe does not believe, or rather, Matti Kuzma does not believe in Valki post board. Sam Rolfe does. I'm kind of curious to see who ends up being correct here.
Yeah, that's interesting. And we are, by the way, jumping in here in game number 3. This is going to be our decider here. They've split the first games, and we are underway. A double Embercleave opener here for Sam. Matti has a more ideal number of Embercleaves, just the one right now.
One thing I've enjoyed about covering this, by the way, is Marshall, you've done a lot of coverage of premier level events, of covering, the MPL players, rivals players, what have you. They're pretty. They keep their emotions, pretty close to the vest. They don't react a whole lot. The players this weekend are a lot more emotive, and you can see them react visibly as they draw or not draw what they want. And I got to say, I enjoy that more.
Yeah, no, it is. It makes it a lot more fun to watch. Sam is very emotive. We saw Arne Huschenbeth in the last one. He really shows you what he's feeling at all times. By the way, this is going to be Red Cap Melee taking care of this Bone Crusher Giant. These are the first spells cast by our players here, and the board remains clear.
And once again, you see Matti Kuzma not playing Magda on turn 2, and Sam Rolfe just not having a target for that Bone Crusher Giant as a result.
All right, there's Bone Crusher Giant now for Matti. And here it is, Isika's Chariot, one of the big hitters in the matchup, coming down on turn 4 here for Sam.
Drawing an untapped land there was critical for Sam getting to deploy that Chariot, and we'll see if Matti wants to react with one of his own. Really not a whole lot of other options at this point in time.
Common play pattern, if both players have a Chariot, is for the one that cast it first to just send in there and offer the trade. As it stands, there is actually a trade being offered here, and it looks like Sam's happy to take it. Interesting. He has double Embercleave, but no more Chariots. I think if I was in Matti's seat, I would assume that Sam had another Chariot to cast here, but he doesn't.
Yeah, that's a block you don't usually expect to see unless there's another Chariot, but Sam was happy to make that. He didn't even think about it.
There was no hesitation there. He was like, whew, got that Bone Crusher off the battlefield. And as it stands, here come both cats.
So this is interesting. So Matti is well aware of Embercleave, but it still might be worth it to activate, crew your Chariot, block one of the cats, and then Embercleave is a trade. It's not just an eat. So that seems like that is not going to be too bad in terms of board presence to trade for a cat and kind of force Sam to spend his turn casting Embercleave.
Yeah, that's all the mana there for Sam Rolfe for the turn being spent here. And as you mentioned, yeah, he gets rid of the Chariot, but it costs him a cat in the process. He plays his land for the turn and passes. Sam Rolfe kind of racing to 0 on a hand size here as well. You see the Ox of Agonis in his hand. He's got a couple of those. Land Innkeeper. Both cats are going to come into the red zone, and there's an Embercleave from Matti Kuzma as well. So this is a real slugfest between these two. Down to 12 for both players. A land off the top for Sam. Not what he wants to see here.
I mean, he could equip Embercleave, but if he does that, then he's not really doing anything else this turn. And here comes the Ox.
Here it is. This Ox needs to find some action, and it kind of didn't. He found a Magda and 2 lands with it.
And this now gives Matti the initiative because if Madi draws an untapped land, if he wanted, he could Shatter Skull Smashing both creatures and attack for a bunch of damage. Still might be in a position where he wants to cast Smashing, though drawing that Lovestruck Beast, pretty appealing to get a Lovestruck Beast plus a draw off the Edgewall Innkeeper, especially since Lovestruck Beast wielding an Embercleave is a pretty big game.
That's right. Big turn here for Madi. He's going to take his time on this one. This is one of those inflection points that, you know, you can just sense that it matters, right? Like the line of play he takes here could have an impact on the outcome of the match in a pretty significant way. So he's just going to take a minute to really think through his options. He's got good options, right? Like this is one of those moments where it's more about not screwing it up and optimizing than it is about like, if I make one play, I lose and one play I win. He's in a good position. But as we know, this type of matchup can end very quickly thanks to Embercleave. It just changes the math so much. All right, it looks like Quizma wants to attack with both of the cats. At least that's what he's got lined up and taking a look at now. One of them's wielding a sword. The other one is not. But they're both at the worst trades for the creatures on the other side here. And this is big time pressure coming from Quizma. He's going to get in for 6 here after trading off for the other cat. And that's going to knock Sam Rolfe down to 6 himself. And that Embercleave is still on that cat over there as well. He doesn't have to spend the mana to re-equip here.
I really like how Madi played this, and by putting Sam down to 6, it makes it so Sam is just going to basically never get value out of this Embercleave, or make it very difficult for him to get value from it, because the Embercleave, you know, much like a lot of cards in this matchup, favors the aggressor.
Yeah, Madi took a really interesting line there. He kind of split the difference. He got in for the 6, traded off the cat, and then he cast Shatter Skull Smashing to take down the Ox. Now that leaves Sam with no creatures on the board. He does have a lair and a den in his land pile there. But that Embercleave, as you mentioned, Luis, is just sitting there by itself, not doing anything. So Sam's going to go Lovestruck Beast, equip it, and of course, before that, he's going to cast Heart's Desire as well.
That Lovestruck Beast was a huge top deck for Sam, because now Madi doesn't have a good attack. Now there's an Embercleave equipped. He can play his own Lovestruck, but now he's the one behind. The way that worked out, it would have been a lot better had he just played the Lovestruck Beast turn, but it made a lot of sense for him to make the play he did.
Yeah, he's going to play the Lovestruck Beast now.
Dueling Embercleaves is really interesting here, because you really want to cast Shatter Skull Smashing, but Madi's definitely considering playing it untapped as a land to equip Embercleave onto his Lovestruck Beast so that the Lovestruck Beasts can trade. He doesn't have the ability to cast it even for 1 to maybe kill a token or anything like that. And the fact that Sam Rolfe has 7 lands in play is starting to add up, just because when you're equipping Embercleave every turn or 2, then the amount of mana you have really matters.
That's right. Yeah, it's interesting. This has really put a premium on who has the biggest creature on board. And they happen to both have Lovestruck Beast, but things are getting precarious here for Quizma. And yeah, he's going to play that untapped drop down to 9 so that he can throw the Embercleave over on the Beast and hope that Sam Rolfe doesn't draw something to interact. And it looks like he didn't. He drew a layer of the Hydra here.
One thing to note as well is with these creature lands and extra mana, Sam's got an advantage. At some point, he might be able to like equip Embercleave onto Lair of the Bugbear after trading off the Lovestrucks. He also has an Ox of Agonis, so given enough time, Sam's going to get a lot of value by bringing back that Ox.
Yeah, it's not quite ready to come back off of Escape, but as trades happen, although they're not going to here, Sam's actually just going to pass the turn. He's not going to let the trade happen here. Bone Crusher Giant was the draw for Quizma. Wow.
Bone Crusher is nice. Quizma is getting value every time he draws an adventure creature, so too much of that and Quizma will start to pull ahead. It's interesting to see which of these players will want to trade off the Lovestrucks first.
And it looks like Quizma is going to raise his hand there, Luis, and say, me, I'll do it. He's sending in with the Lovestruck Beast. And now Sam has some interesting options here. Trading Lovestruck Beast is the safest play, as he doesn't take any damage in this scenario. He could throw a whole bunch of creatures under. What could he make, a 3/3? Yeah, probably not worth it. So he's just going to trade off. Both of the Embercleaves fall off. They're just sitting on the battlefield now. And Kuzma can just go for a play of like kill Magda, play a Bone Crusher, draw a card.
And that would bring Sam to 7 cards in graveyard, which is not enough to bring back Ox, especially since Ox is one of those cards. So yeah, you really just got to get full value from your Innkeeper, and you'll get further and further ahead as you do.
This is precarious. Oh, there's the Akroan War, though, for Kuzma. That could be huge. It would have been nice a little earlier in this particular turn, as it probably would have just been lethal. But as it stands now, there's only the 1/1 on the other side of the battlefield. The biggest threats are actually the lands now from Sam. Oh, he finds a forest off the top of the library. Heartbreak here for Sam Rolfe. That is not what he wanted to see.
So Sam can make a 4/4 lair and equip Embercleave, so that's 10 points of damage. The problem with that is you're tapped out. So at that point, Madi can just block with like a Jaspera Sentinel, fall to 1, and just have lethal on the crackback.
Mm-hmm. Is there a way for Sam to survive here? Because if he can't kill Mati this turn, he's just going to have to make a huge lair to block.
Can make an 8/8 lair, so yeah, that is. It turns out that's actually good against the Akroan War as well, just because he's got an 8/8 blocker that's not stealable. But the fact that Sam had to just pass the turn and not spend any mana in order to do that, whereas Madi is going to get to like start playing cards, that really does give Madi the advantage. It's also possible because Madi has his own lair of the Hydra that he could maybe set up an attack with everything, and that wouldn't be quite lethal, it doesn't look like, but it would be close.
Double Magda in hand now for Madi Kuzma. He's also got the Akroan War. For Sam Rolfe, his hand is just a land, but he does have relevant permanents. He has Embercleave on the battlefield, which is always just kind of a threat, and then he has a couple of creature lands, actually 3 of them, and then Ox of Agonis in his yard, but he isn't there yet on the graveyard. He needs another couple of cards to go in. So Embercleave is going to go on Bone Crusher Giant.
And if you're Madi, you also have to decide, do you think Sam Rolfe has any removal? Do you think that if you make like some kind of all-out attack, you'll end up in a spot where you regret it because he kills the Bone Crusher and one of the layers eats a smaller creature? I think at this point, I wouldn't blame Madi for not playing around removal. I think that's just kind of what you have to do. And looks like Madi's going to make a big move here. The Akroan War taking a 1/1.
He is. So he's going to attack with everything. And we're going to see Lair of the Hydra get fired up here for Sam Rolfe to jump in front of the Bone Crusher. Is that enough, though? It's an 8/8. He takes 2 still. 3, 4, 5 goes to 1.
I think.
Oh, it's 7/7.
Oh, it's only 7/7.
So that should be enough to kill him, shouldn't it?
No, that will be game then, because enough will come through that it'll put him to exactly 0. And good figuring out the lines by Madi, and now Madi is into scrum. Wow. With 8 wins there.